Hey there, YouTube. This video, we're going to cover the recap of testing the fossil down at the Mopar Muscle Dragfest in London, Kentucky. If you watched any of the previous content that I put out with my dad's car, you know that we had a really successful weekend there with his car. He was actually able to run her up one night and win another night. So we had a really awesome time at that event. And we had a good time with my truck too. We didn't set any new personal bests like we were hoping for, but we actually got a lot of really good data, and we're learning more and more about the combination and how to ultimately make it go faster. So just to recap before we get in, so get you guys back up to speed, where we left off with the truck, I wanted to switch back to the old valve body setup that I had, and I did the video showing that, and so that's where we basically picked up. We didn't change anything with the engine tune-up or the nitrous tune-up or anything like that. Just simply did that valve body swap and then going back to the track to kind of pick up where we left off. So Friday, they had test and tune opportunities from 2 to 6. And we're still trying to line out my dad's car, so I wanted to help him because I knew he was going to be racing the remainder of the weekend. So we're trying to focus on 2 projects at once. Is kind of hard. So I spent the morning part of the test session helping my dad, and then I was able to make a run later in the day Friday. So I do my usual routine to get the truck ready, warm it up, do a spool up, make sure everything looks good on that. Everything was looking kosher. And so we go up there, we go through the water box, we do our burnout. Everything just has been really awesome with the burnouts. They're very repeatable, very consistent, really happy with the burnout. So I back up from the burnout. You'll see that I back up really slow, and that's something that I've started doing this year. Everything, if you watch, everything I do is kind of very slow, and that's some stuff that I've learned, because the faster you go, the faster you roll through the water box, and the faster you back up, the easier it is to get out of your marks. So the goal is, the purpose of the burnout and the goal and everything is not just to, warm the tires up. It's, you want to leave in the marks that you make. So ideally the burnout needs to be as straight as possible. It needs to be centered with where you're trying to leave at on the starting line. And on a slick tire burnout, like what we're doing, you want to be able to burn to the starting line at least. So that way you're leaving on fresh rubber. So the more precise you are with lining the truck up in the water box, making sure it's centered in the racetrack or centered where you want to leave in the racetrack, and trying to keep the burnout as straight as possible, and then backing up as straight as possible to where you end up leaving in the marks that you just freshly made. So that's why everything looks very slow, but it's a methodical reason for it. So you've seen there, we back up from the burnout, we go up, we take the tree, turn on the first bulb, spools up quick, roll it in, set the trans brake holds good, no drama there, really happy with how that looks. But then when we let go of the button, this thing is just, it's not happy. went 158 down low. It went 421 to the 330. And I should have lifted at that point, but I was wanting to look at some shift point stuff because I was hopeful that we would go out there and make some good runs. And so I just ran it all the way out, and it was terrible. It went a 669 at 107. And I was pretty disappointed. If you listen to the video, it just sounds weird in the video. It's really lazy leaving the starting line, and then when it's in third gear, it seems like it's like brrr, like something's dragging it down, and the RPM coming back up. It just seemed really, really unhappy. So I go back to the pits with my tail tucked between my legs, and I start looking at the data, and I'm trying to figure out, you know, what's going on. Why is this thing such a turd? And then actually, let's just look at the data, and I'll show you guys here. But before we look at the data, I just want to say thanks to you guys for watching all these videos and subscribing to the channel and liking these videos. I'm coming up close on the 1,000 subscriber goal that I set at the beginning of the year. And if any of you guys have been watching along, you know that I said that I was going to do a giveaway when we get to 1,000. And I still definitely want to do that. So before we go any further, get in the comments right here and tell me what you want to see a giveaway. It's got to be reasonable. You know, I can't give away a truck or anything crazy like some of these guys do. But let me know what you guys think would be an appropriate giveaway for the 1,000 subscriber mark. And I just wanted to say thanks for sticking around and listening to me ramble all the time. Okay, now let's check out the data. Okay, so right here I have the engine RPM in red, boost in green, and the wheel speed, aka drive shaft RPM, in yellow. Really the drive shaft RPM we don't need for this purpose, but I just wanted to show you guys that it wasn't like it was spinning and hooking or anything to cause the weirdness with the RPM, and I just kind of wanted to reference the boost. Figured you guys might find that helpful. So this is when we leave the starting line right here, and right there it's at 19 pounds of boost when we leave the starting line. A little bit lower than what I would want to leave the starting line at, but I've gone 140, 160 foot on this same tune-up with 16.8 pounds of boost. So not totally upset about the 19 pounds of boost, just a little bit less than what I would like. And then you see the RPM, the way that it climbs here, and it starts to roll over right here, and then it goes, and then it kind of like lets go again. And so to me, that's the engine, the converter grabbing the engine and kind of starting to drag it back a little bit. If you look at some of my older runs, this is more of a straight line to the 1-2 shift. And you can see it's kind of like rolled over at the 1-2 shift here, and that's 4,800 RPM. It's kind of rolled up before it gets to the 1-2, and then it makes the 1-2, and it only drops 400 RPM on the 1-2, and then it kind of comes up and plateaus. Like, it's just super ugly. It should not look like this. It should look like like this wheel speed is, how it's climbing up. It should climb up, it should drop off, it should climb up, and it should drop off, and it should run out. Well, you'll see in third here, this is the 2-3 shift, and you see where it's like trying to climb, but it's pretty flat through here, and on the engine RPM, and then all of a sudden it starts dragging down. If you watch the video, you'll hear it. That's when it goes and runs out the back. And then you see where it starts to climb back up before I click it off there. So this right here is really concerning to me, because at the time I wasn't 100% sure what was going on with this. So I'm kind of racking my brain trying to figure out that weird RPM deal. And I'm looking at all of the vitals, and everything looks fine with the engine. Everything's fine with the transmission. But I don't want to go up there and make the same run again, because that's not helpful for anything. So I took the remainder of the evening to think about some things and to look back at some old logs. And one of my older logs, the last time we were at Edgewater actually, when the trans brake re-engaged, either I hit the trans brake button or something made the trans brake re-engage, In second gear, it did that same weird engine RPM dip where it was like the converter was pulling it back. And so what I was thinking is that when I'm on the trans brake, the dump valve in the converter in the valve body is open, so I'm draining the converter pressure. So when I hit the trans brake button or whatever happened at Edgewater, that meant that the dump opened for a quick second, for about 0.2 of a second to be exact. And so I went back and I looked and I said, okay, well, on that run, if the dump opened at, when the trans brake was applied, if the dump turned on, then how much time between that time and when it started to do that weird engine RPM on that particular run? And it was right around 2.5 seconds, 2.4 to 2.5. And I said, okay. So then I went and I looked at that log, and I couldn't really get much out of that log as far as like where it went into, because the whole run was just so kind of wonky. But I have this, it's coming off of the trans brake button, the boost, the dump valve is. So I looked and I said, okay, well, where does it start to do its first weird thing? And there wasn't really any good data, as you've seen in that engine RPM was just so all over the place. I couldn't conclusively come to any conclusion there. So the next morning I tried something. I said, okay, I'm gonna turn the dump valve off at 18 pounds of boost, and I'm gonna do a spool up, and I'm gonna see how long it takes to refill the converter. And the way that I'm judging refill of the converter is at 18 pounds of boost, it'll come up and it'll get up on its staging limiter. So it should be somewhere between, 18 to 20 pounds of boost. And when it's up on the staging limiter, when the converter finally refills, the boost should go up. So I do that spool up and turn the dump valve off at 18 pounds of boost. And 2.5 seconds after 18 pounds of boost, so at 18.1 from there until it started to make more boost, it was 2.5 seconds. And it made about 5 pounds more boost. So I said, okay, well, that is exactly what I'm seeing with the old log. So for the Saturday's run, I was like, I'm gonna leave everything alone and I'm just gonna turn the dump valve off at 18 pounds of boost and see what it does. So we get the truck ready, we go up there, roll through the water box again, do another good burnout, not quite as good as the one that I did yesterday. I shifted into third a little quickly, and so, but it was perfectly fine, especially for what we're doing right now. But did a nice burnout, back up, take the tree, and this is what the run looks like.
Man was here yesterday, but he made passes before I got here. But it was like Mark and
So we changed no power, we changed nothing with the tune-up of any sort, and all I did was turn the dump valve off at 18 pounds of boost, and it went 145.0, 60 foot, it went 4 flat through the 330, and it went 640 at 107 out the back. So same mile per hour. So the same mile per hour tells you that it wasn't making any more power, but it picked up 0.3 essentially. And let's go look at the data and I'll show you why. So everything's the same colors as last time. Red is engine RPM, green's boost, Yellow is the wheel speed. You can see it had a little blip of wheel speed here right off the button. And I think that's the tire wrapping up and then letting go a little bit. I think it spun maybe just a little bit of a hair right through there. But the main thing to focus on here is the engine RPM. So you can see the 1-2, that awesome shift drop that I'm talking about, the 2-3, just those are beautiful. I mean, that's picture perfect shift drops. That thing's dropping 800 RPM on the shifts, which is, you wouldn't want it to drop any more than that. And keep in mind, this is still a non-lockup converter, so that's really good. Super happy with how all that looks. But in the front here, you see, it still has a little bit of weirdness. So, has that same kind of flashes up a little bit, converter starts to pull it back, it starts to climb, and then all of a sudden converter drags the motor actually down right there, and then it runs back off and everything's perfect from there. Well, remember, we're turning the dump off at 18 pounds of boost. We left the starting line at 22.1 pounds of boost, but if you do the time from when it was 18.1 to when the dump valve turned off to right in this area here where it starts to grab the motor, it's right at 2.5 seconds. So we now have 3 consistent, repeatable data to tell us that it takes 2.5 seconds from the time the dump valve turns off to refill the converter. And that's what's grabbing the engine and dragging it back. So that's really good to know, because there's a lot we can do with that information. So now that we know exactly when the converter is going to refill from the time that we turn the dump off, and how it reacts, makes the engine react to it, we can, if we need to, we can kind of use that as a tuning tool. Say if we, once we start putting power back in this thing, and we're on a surface that's not so good, we could leave the dump on a little bit longer. We could, turn it off earlier. If, there's some things that we can do with that. But most importantly, it kind of tells us a little bit about our converter, and that we have a very efficient converter. What I didn't mention there when I was showing you guys the logs is that at the top of first and second gear, that converter was 96% efficient. So 100% efficient is lockup. This was 96. It only had 4% of slip. Now, when we start increasing horsepower again, converter efficiency will start to drop. But I will also say about that is that was only at 5,000 engine RPM on those shifts. With the old converter that I had last year, the best pass I ever made, where it went 135 to 60 and 377 through the middle, I was shifting that thing at 5,300, and it was 90% efficient at 5,300. But the difference between 5,300 and 5,000 was 3% of slip difference. So at 5,000 RPM, it was 87% efficient, and at 5,300, it was 90% efficient. So we can raise the shift RPM up even more as we start increasing horsepower to regain a little bit of efficiency there. But going back to the dump, the reason that we're seeing this so much, because the only change we made between those two runs was just when we turned the dump off. Well, before, it didn't seem like it mattered as much, right? But we had a different converter, a different stator. Anytime you play in with a different converter, it's going to change the way that the dump valve works, or reacts, I should say, because the fill rate's always going to be the same. It's always going to take 2.5 seconds to refill it, but the way the converter reacts as it gets refilled because of the design of the stator is going to change how quickly or how slowly the converter gets efficient. Obviously, this converter gets efficient really quickly. The reason that we're seeing it beyond that too is because we have all the power out of the truck. On that last run, it was only making 900 horsepower. So we go and throw 1,300 horsepower at this thing like we were running last year, and you're gonna be able to, the converter's not gonna have the chance to be able to drag the engine down as much. So I'm not concerned with that moving forward. Once we get back into the horsepower, I think that we might not have even seen it in the log, or if we did, it wouldn't have that drastic where it actually tugs the motor back. So overall, a really good learning experience, because now we have a lot better understanding about this new converter. We have a lot better understanding of the dump valve, which is going to allow us to manipulate both of those things to make the runs as fast as possible. I know 145, 60 foot is slow, but just look at the engine RPM and you can see that it wasn't ideal through the first part of the run there. I have no doubt in my mind that we could get back into the high 130s with just turning the dump off earlier to make sure that the converter is totally refilled without changing any horsepower, any nitrous tune-up or anything. Keep in mind, the fuel's cut all the way back, and it's just a 60 jet off the trans brake. Other than that, there's not a bunch of power in this thing. And the reason for that, if you remember talking about it, is so that we could start to learn how to run this thing on the clean side. We're trying to run it leaner. We're trying to get rid of the smoke. And we know that it's ultimately maybe might take a lot of nitrous to get to there. But the last thing that I wanted to do was to go out here and throw a bunch of nitrous to this thing and tear something up, because I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how this engine reacts. So the best way to do it is like I do everything else. Just baby step your way there. And that's where we're at with it. We're baby stepping our way back into success. But if you just table the ET, right? You just set the ET to the side. Look at the whole picture here. Look at the whole run. When you can go from the water box to the finish line consistently, the same way, every time, professionally, straight, quickly, when everything is in line, your whole program is improving. And I really feel like, even though I was really hoping to get another 5-second time slip, I'm very happy with what we have learned this year. I know more this year than I knew last year, and that's how it works in drag racing. Next year, I'll be making a video telling you guys how much I know more next year than I did this year. I'll be calling myself a dummy. But that's really how it works. And the whole run, I'm so happy with. I love being able to do just a nice, consistent burnout. Love being able to take the tree and, on idle, stick it, spool it quick, roll it in, set the trans brake, just everything consistent and repeatable. It makes it easier for me to drive the truck. When I'm not worried about, do I have to drive around the water, or can they move this piece of equipment so I can get around, or man, we couldn't get around all the water. Does one of the tires have a little bit of water on it? Are one of the tires warmer or colder than the other? That's another thing that I'm seeing improvement here that my dad actually pointed out to me. Go back and watch some of the old videos. Before we were doing burnouts, even at 145 and 141 60 foots, the truck was driving around. Sometimes it'd make a nice straight clean one, and sometimes and it's not doing that now. And my dad's theory, I believe, is correct. He said that now all of the tires have the same amount of traction. You're doing a burnout, you're getting all 4 of the tires hot, you're getting them all heated up, and you're in your new marks, your fresh rubber, and all tires have the same amount of traction, so it just goes straight. We'll see when we start turning it up and we try to go 120 60 foots. We'll see if that remains the case, but it is definitely way more promising. We're way closer with the air pressure than where we've ever been. We're even way closer with the chassis. We'll see when we start trying to go faster. But if you just look at the overall package that we have right now, it's way better than having a time slip that says 590, but you can't do anything else right. You can't race if you can't do it all. You know, you can go out and just be a test and tune hero, and if that's what you want to do, then that's cool. You know, you don't have to worry about none of this stuff. Just go up there and turn on both bulbs like you're at UCC and spool it up and, you know, let go of the button. And if it drives around, just drive it or whatever. But if you want to go out there and have a really professional looking program that makes you as the driver feel confident and allows you to do your job better, you're going to have an overall better success. So that's where we're at with the truck. Sorry we don't have no new personal best, but man, I'm telling you, it's coming. Now, for moving forward, I didn't mention too, there was a blown exhaust manifold gasket on that 640 pass, which I didn't really realize how bad it was until after the run. But basically the side of that thing was torched, and it was my fault because I haven't maintained the studs enough. I have never retorqued them since I put the exhaust manifold studs on there. But anyhow, that's back together now, and we could totally go to the track. And I really wanted to. I wanted to make another run that day, but with the blown exhaust manifold gasket, I didn't have one. You know, we were done. But if I was going to go back to the track, I believe that I could leave the power alone and I could just manipulate the dump a little bit more. And I think we could pick up 2/10. I think we could run 620s, you know, 1/10 and a half. With the same power that's in it. I think I could manipulate the shift points a little bit, and I think that we could make the thing run 16s with the same power that's in it now. The reason why I don't really want to do that is because I'm also learned some stuff. I've got the AFR working now, so I'm happy about that. The best the AFR gets right now, on the limiter, it's pretty nice. It's, you know, before I let go of the transbrake button, it's 18.1 to 1 on the fuel ratio. But as soon as I let go of the button, it just goes to hell. And the best it ever gets is 12.4 to 1. So if we're going to run this thing on the clean side, we got to get that way further to the lean. You know, we need to be 18, 19 plus down track. So in order to do that, we either need to run more air or more nitrous. Well, I can tell you by looking at the data that I cannot run much more nitrous without having really, you know, inadvertent effects of it. So the boost, before fuel only, this thing would make 83 to 85 pounds of boost. Well, with the fuel cut all the way back and one little baby nitrous jet turned on, it'll make 83 to 85 pounds of boost. So in order for me to spray more nitrous, it's gonna make more boost. The boost isn't necessarily what I'm scared of. I don't really want it to make any more than what it is now because it doesn't need to. But the EGT and where it's at with the engine RPM is telling me that I have a drive pressure problem. At 5,000 RPM, from 4,800 to 5,000 RPM, you can feel it. And if I showed you the G meter, you could see it. The truck lays over. I mean, you can feel it in the truck going down the track. Once it crests over 4,800, it starts leaning over. And then it makes the shift at 5,000 and it picks back up and runs back off. Well, as it starts laying over, EGT starts going up. So what that tells you is that you're making too much drive pressure. So you either need to make some changes with your turbo, or you need to put a wastegate or two on it. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to run more nitrous. When your engine does that, when it starts to lay over and EGT starts going up at the high RPM, then you know you have a drive pressure problem. It's not making any more power. Once your drive pressure gets out of check of boost, you know, once it gets beyond 1 to 1, and mine's probably triple digits, that your engine will not make any more power. So not only are you just making it harder on the motor because it can't breathe, it can't get it out, but it's not gonna make any more power anyways. So we are gonna have to change some parts is where we're at with it. And if we're gonna change some parts, there's no reason to go back to the track. in my opinion. I would really like to, like I said, I want to get some more seat time in it. I'm really happy now that I can do everything really consistently, but I also don't want to put wear and tear on it for no reason. If we're just going to change a lot of the setup up this winter anyways, and then kind of be not necessarily back to square one, but the data that we learn at the track moving on might not be helpful for us next year. And I really want to focus on next year. Even though the ET doesn't show it, the rest of the program tells me that I'm getting close to having something raceable. And I really want to race next year. I want to try to hit it hard next year. And in order to prepare for next year, I have to start right now. And that includes things beyond just the race truck. That's what I think a lot of people don't understand. That includes your whole life, getting your whole life ready. If you're gonna go and try to run a series or 6 or 8 races, and you wanna try to make sure that you're at every one of those things, you got to get your whole life ready. Your business has got to be in check. Your house has got to be in check. Your property, your everything's got to be ready to go. So I am going to call it quits, officially calling it quits with the Fossil for the rest of the year. And I am going to get everything ready for next season. That doesn't mean we're not going to do videos on this, because like I said, there's things that are going to be changing on this. Not a lot, no big changes. It's not getting a 6.7. It's not getting more fuel. It's not getting any big changes, just little changes that will make this thing an overall better race truck. And we will definitely bring you guys along for it. So don't be too sad. The race truck content is by far not over. We're just not going to be going to the track anymore till springtime. So before I close this out, if you guys are still sticking around listening to me ramble, I have a big business announcement coming on Monday. I will be posting a video. I'll probably just go ahead and drop that video as Monday's video at 7 o'clock. But if you guys are interested in my business and what I do and the transmissions and all that stuff, tune into this one. If there's any video that I ask you to watch, it'll be this one. Changing some stuff up and making, kind of a big announcement. It's a big announcement to me. So be on the lookout for that coming Monday. I'll post it everywhere, all over my social media, try to get it out there. And if you don't mind, share the word, spread the word on that one. But guys, like always, I appreciate you watching. Thanks for making it this far. Thanks for sticking around with me with the race truck. We have a bright future ahead of us, and I can't wait to bring you guys along for the ride. So like always, we will see you next time.